Welcome to the Natural Parents Podcast, where we will cover all things faith, health, family, and wealth through a biblical perspective of putting things in life that matter most back into order. We're reminded of Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added to you." Join us each week as we focus on what truly matters most in this life and passing those values on to the next generation. This is the Natural Parents Podcast with Ryan and Abbie.
Welcome back to another edition of the Natural Parents Podcast. We're super excited to share with you guys today an amazing connection that we have. Abré Billingsley, who has some awesome Instagram accounts. One is Midwest Monty Mama that talks all about raising kiddos both in home and at school through a Montessori perspective. And she also has the Wild Billingsley's account where she shares her amazing family. She just added baby number 4 to the mix. Might get a special guest preview from that baby here today on the podcast. But Abré, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm 28 and I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together almost 13 years. We've got 4 kiddos together. Our oldest is 6, our daughter is 4, and then our 2 little boys are 2 and a newborn, so 2 weeks old. I am a Montessori educator, so I work with children ages 0 to 3. I work with, really, really small kids and just allowing them to find their independence and just become who they intrinsically are. Instead of, just following what they're told. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Awesome. So I know that a lot of listeners may be newer to Montessori, or they may have heard of it, but not know a lot of details. Can you provide a starting point for parents who want to learn more about implementing Montessori ideas at home?
Yeah. So the basis within Montessori is essentially just allowing the child to find their independence. And this isn't more so just to have like the child become completely independent. It's just allowing them to feel like they're part of their community, feel like they can have just some background to go off of so they know that they're capable. And ultimately this will create adults who are capable and independent and have all of these life skills that are so vital. And really just doing this at home is just including your child from the beginning. Whether you have a newborn and you're just baby wearing them around the house and they're just doing laundry with you, washing dishes, helping with other kids, getting ready during the day, things like that, just exposing them to those daily tasks. And then moving on to like toddlerhood and young childhood and just allowing them to participate, whether it be chopping an apple or throwing the laundry into the dryer, which toddlers absolutely love that. I find that's a common one, but just allowing them to get involved in literally anything that you're doing on a daily basis.
I love that. And actually it makes me think, well, the first thing you mentioned, and then talking about that, how you're really just trying to help blossom their independence, right? And there's a quote, I think it's Winston Churchill who comes to my mind, but he says, the problem with education isn't that we're undereducated. It's just that we're only educated to the point where we don't ask questions, right? And it's like doing this from a very early age, to me, it seems where maybe I know there's other different methods of early childhood development and education, all these different things. But in that construct of what you just said, to me would really be about like, hey, how can we help our children blossom into, one, people that we want them to become, and 2, to ask questions, right? Not so much like I'm going to question all authority, or whatever, but it's just like, hey, I'm not a droid. I'm a human and I have a brain and God gave me the ability to use it. So I'm going to do that. Right. And so doing that from very early, often, even just with the types of toys, right? I've seen some of your about, what that looks like. How does Montessori do that in and of itself? If you don't mind sharing that.
So it's very hands-on. Dr. Montessori had this idea that she has a quote, and it says, "What the hand does, the mind remembers." And I've seen this in action so many times where that light bulb sparks and you see it in the child's eyes when they finally grasp a concept once their hands have understood what's really going on. There are specific math materials for like ages 3 to 6. And I know that sounds crazy, like having math materials for so young of a child, but to the naked eye, I guess it would look like a toy, but these things are so specifically created that essentially what the child is learning is pi. So like 3.14. And you're like, a 3-year-old is learning this. But essentially that's what they're learning. And watching these small children use these materials, and then by the time they're 6 and they're phasing out of that classroom, they have like a more concrete understanding of such an abstract idea. So that's something that Montessori was very heavy on, is providing children with these concrete ideas for such abstract ideas.
Yes, and I love that. And I just think that, like you said, just including your kid and everything and your children and just being intentional with that. I feel like this method really helps us to focus on our purpose as parents and including them, because we live in a camper right now while we build our home. And I'm like, just let me do it. Just let me do it. We have no counter space. Just let me do it. And I'm like, no, they have to learn and do that. I think just that intentionality between everyday activities not only just helps you be intentional with your moments with your children and not just work over them while they play on their own, but also I love Ruth Ann Zimmerman. And I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's on YouTube and she's just like teaching all these things. And one day she was like, if you don't know this, don't feel bad. Like, don't expect to know it. She's like, I learned at my grandmother's elbow, like how to do all this. And we were very involved in everything, and how a lot of, our age group are going back to like the homesteading and homemaking and all of those things. And so we're all learning it for the very first time.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I can be hard on myself. I'm like, I should know this already. I should be better. But it's like, I'm just learning it, but bringing your children up so that they can learn at your elbow. And then it's like second nature to them, but also knowing how to do those day-to-day activities themselves, like cutting up an apple safely, washing dishes, whatever it is that they're wanting to do, including them in. So I just love that about Montessori. I love that. And I do know that a lot of parents are looking for other ways to avoid screen time. So what are some of your like favorite go-to whenever maybe you do just need a break, you're not baking or doing anything, and you just want to be able to engage your children in good for them play? What do you recommend?
Our number one go-to is outside. We have to get outside. All of my children are always itching to be outside 24 hours a day. And sometimes we have to rein it in. But really, I really just say, like, you can't, it's easier to keep a child from bouncing off the walls if you take away the walls.
Yeah.
So getting them outside is the easiest way to keep that at bay. But I mean, obviously there are times where you can't just get outside. And I really like to take into consideration like what my children's interests are. So just kind of finding something that they enjoy and then just putting it at their level. So that way they can grab it whenever they're having a bored moment or they're needing something to do and they don't want to ask me, hey, can we get this out? Can we get that out? It's already there for them and they know where it's at. They know how to put it back away, and then everything is just back. Or, I mean, even just like allowing them to be bored. And I know that's a hard one because I definitely have had moments where I just hear, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you'll figure it out. Boredom is very hard to navigate, especially with multiple children. But they figure it out. They definitely figure it out. And I find that's when they have their most creative moments. And it'll be those moments where I'm like, man, maybe I do need to go get something for them. And then I think, I'm just going to go grab something really quick. And I come back and I peek my head in the room and they've already figured something out. So boredom is good.
That's amazing. That's seriously like probably my biggest takeaway ever on anything like this is just like
boredom is good. Yeah.
in my own perspective, because I'm not good at being bored. Like I feel like I don't sit still well. Like I don't do all these things. Like I always feel like I got to be doing something. You know, sometimes it's like, hey, boredom is good. Like sometimes, and from the spirituality standpoint, like sometimes that would blossom an opportunity to talk to God too, right? And that's like in my adult. Right? It's just like talking with our children in these different ways of saying like, hey, slow down, quiet, be calm, like just embrace that for a second. But then two, it then blossoms their creativity, like you just said, like, oh gosh, Mom, I'm bored. Oh, well, that's okay. Oh, yeah. But I guess if I really don't want to be bored, what can I do? What can I come up with? And that kind of thing. That's awesome. That's a huge takeaway for me.
Yeah, I definitely allow them to witness me being bored as well. And I mean, there's times where I've had my children be like, Mommy, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just sitting. Just sitting. I don't know what we're doing right now, but we're just gonna sit until something comes up. But
that's cool.
I think that that's so important because I feel like, you know, my to-do list is never ending, as is anybody's. And if our children witness us just running around and always having something to do and like frantic, like they become that way. And so leading by example and being that where you can just sit and not have something to do. And like, not only it's, I guess, just fostering the idea that it's not laziness. It's just okay to rest. And I think that sometimes we just think like, I can't rest, that's being lazy, or oh my gosh, that must mean that my to-do list isn't important, or what is so-and-so going to think whenever I haven't accomplished all of this stuff. And it's like, take the pressure off, but also not only for your own self, but just so that your children can witness that too.
And one of friend of mine gave us a book, and maybe you've heard of it. It sounds like you do a decent job of practicing it, but the book is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it's so profound because it's like we in our world, we just feel like if we're not busy, like we actually say that. Like I ask people, hey, how you doing? And they say, I'll staying busy, right? Like it's this like pride badge of honor, like I'm staying busy. And it's like, did God call us to be busy? Or you know what I mean? Like where does that fit in? And so sometimes it is good. I say busy can be a blessing, but we got to keep it as a perspective too. It's like we don't want to foster that necessarily through our children. Of this chaotic feeling of energy of like, if I'm not doing something, then something's wrong. Right. So,
yeah. I mean, a couple months ago, I found we were in like a very busy season, and our pastor did such a great job at communicating through his sermon about resting and not being in a hurry. And he talked about how, you know, you can't walk with Jesus if you're running. And that really stuck with me. And I kind of had to take a step back and be like, you know, maybe we need to cut some things out or just say no to some of these things and just be still for a little bit, because it was a little chaotic. And I noticed my children taking a step back as well too. So definitely just taking a little bit of time to be bored, to be still, and then allowing your children to be bored and be still.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that's really good because I just think it kind of helps where everything else in the world is like overstimulating and encouraging more of that, you know, ADHD type mentality and just refocusing them. For sure. I really love that.
For kids, well, and I know you talk about this, but both at home and in the school setting and these different things, but like families who don't have much of a concept of like Montessori in the home, what are some things that they can do to kind of run with this concept for like the younger children too, especially like if we're just starting? Like I know you obviously have a newborn and a couple of younger kiddos, but that, you know, 1-year-old to 3-year-old child, what can parents do to get them started off on the right foot?
So there's really one of the spaces, I guess, of curriculum that I would say to really start with, and that's probably the easiest to start with, is called Practical Life. And these are areas in which you're literally just doing daily stuff. So this would be like folding laundry, cooking, washing dishes, things like that. A lot of that involves water. And children at that age, the water play is
water.
Just get the towels out. You know?
Yeah, the water play is a little insane. But I find when you really show them how to do these works first, they really watch and they really do pay attention, and it can get a little bit more controlled. So I would definitely say just involving them with cooking. Food is a great way to get your children involved. I mean, for anybody really who doesn't like eating. So I feel like that's always a great way to get your children involved, is just like giving them safe child-sized tools to chop foods, mix, pour things, allowing them to help fold the laundry. It might not be perfect, and that's okay. It might take a little longer for you both, and that's okay. But when you see them finally fold something and it's even a little bit messy and they're like, look, I did it. There's so much pride in them that like you can't help but be happy. So I feel like just things around the house are probably the easiest and the best way to get started. Just allowing them to join you and just kind of watch first and then allow them to try it.
Yeah, and I've seen that, and I guess it seems like, I think it was from kind of a Montessori perspective, was like when we as parents, to something you mentioned earlier, and I feel this because I'm like, well, let me just do it for you. Like, let me just do it for you. Like when we, even on a toy, right? It's like the square peg, square hole toy, right? Like this goes here and the round one goes in there and the star shaped one goes in here. Like doing it for them because we, in our wisdom, right, want to be like, here, child, watch. Like the star one goes in the star hole. Like, but taking that awe and understanding from them for the first time, like for them to actually just discover that is robbing them of like the greatest joy of it. And so like, even then in life application stuff too, is like, okay, that's fine. Like this little laundry, if it gets done in an hour or 10 minutes, either way it's done. Right. And there's a quote that I really resonated with me anonymously, I guess, or it's more of a parable. I don't know. But a farmer comes to another farmer, and he's driving down the road and he sees this farmer fixing a fence, and his son's there and he's young and he's, whacking away at stuff with a hammer, and he's got the barbed wire in the wrong place and doing everything wrong. And the farmer says to the one, he says, man, you'd probably get this done by now if he weren't out here helping you. And he said, yeah, you're right. He said, but the problem is you think I'm out here building fence. What I'm actually out here doing is raising a son. Right. And so to that point, it's like, gosh, letting them get involved with what we're doing and just letting them get it wrong, letting them play a part in it and learn through that. And then us taking our own backseat of like, hey, it's okay if it gets done today or tomorrow or whenever. We have a priority here, and it's our children and they're learning. So
yeah. There's beauty in a little bit of struggle.
Yeah, for sure.
The hardest part that I'm having is our daughter Brinley mostly loves to wash the dishes. But I just don't know when I'm supposed to rewash them, that she doesn't see me rewashing them. And she's like, oh, Mom, I already got those. I was like, yes, yep.
Good job, sis.
It. Yeah. I just was going to wipe off this part right here one more time. Like, that's it, without them feeling micromanaged. So that's always tough. So if you guys are looking for ways to incorporate Montessori into your life, definitely give her a follow and just watch her page. It is so inspirational, really, just to see everything that you're putting out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add for the listeners before we sign off today?
Your children are capable and you're doing a great job.
I love that. I love that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll catch you next week.
From the bottom of our hearts, we want to thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you know and leave a review. By doing so, we're able to grow this community of amazing people just like you and raise a generation of children that know God and do His will on earth. We'll see you next time.